Hello. Hello, everyone. Just let people sign in. Hi.
How are you?
Hello. Hi. Thank you for coming. Um, okay. I think I'll just kick this off. So if- uh, I'll kind of open it up. If anyone wants to ask any questions first, I've got some stuff that I've prepared. But if anyone wants to ask some pressing questions, um, most likely the most common question that I'm going to get today is why Giga Cloud technology is down. So maybe I'll just kind of talk about that, and then we can kind of talk about other things. And I got some content that I prepared myself. So yeah, so you know that's cool. Thanks, Chris, for joining. So investing is really difficult, and you can do a couple of things in investing. Well, you can do many things. Sorry, you can do a lot of things, but you know there are a few things you can do. You can either buy um, some mega caps and they kind of do okay, or you can try to push the boundaries and do some slightly more, let's call it what it is, risky investments. And these are by definition untested business models. They may, in the next 10 years, be like a household name. We never know. But today, the investor today doesn't care about what the next 10 years is going to bring. The investor today wants to know, how can I make money now? Doesn't matter, like most like doesn't really matter about next year, is now. And you are taking a, or I am taking a position in a company that could turn out, I'm talking about Gigacloud Technologies, but this could be anything like Doximity or whatever, or PayPal. Well, not PayPal because that's already a household name, but that could be, could be something that grows in scale and becomes more established, and then by extension grows to have a shareholder base that is with institutions, and these institutions will not buy and sell the shares every time that someone says something on Twitter, and the share price will be less volatile, and in time, the multiple that people will pay for the stock will go higher. But the downside of buying these untested business models is that it's really brutal. And when it's going up, it's great, but when it's going down, it's not so great. And I'll touch on this later on in today's presentation, but essentially, I got involved with Google Cloud Technologies last December. Obviously, last December, I didn't have a clue that in October of 2024, there'll be like a bull rally in Chinese equities. The reason why the stock Gigacloud got killed in August was that this had been a retail favorite, predominantly because I'm not trumping my horn, I really don't care about that. But after I'd been recommending his name and it had been doing quite well, it became a retail favorite because the SA quant picked it as a top 10, and loads of retail investors got involved with it. And then in July, the market kind of took a bit of a wobble, and this is like, oh my god, why do I own this Chinese thing? So then it kind of sold off, and then the quant system said, oh, sell this stock, and that was just like a washout period. So I've been with the stock throughout all this, downs, ups, sideways movement. But for me as an investor, and I know this is going to jar with a lot of people, but I know it sounds crap what I'm going to say, but like I'm not in the game of looking at charts. That's not my game. I always say to people like, know your game and stick to your game. That's not my game. I'm an inflection investor. I'm looking at the free cash flow of the business, and that is my North Star. And I don't care. Like, obviously, I don't get paid for thinking of stuff. I would get paid with the share price being higher. You buy low, you sell high. But my holding period is 12 months. So in that period of time, there's things that are going to be out of favor at some point. And you need to be in a position where you allow yourself not to get overwhelmed. And yeah, so specifically about GigaCloud, obviously, is a Chinese name, and therefore, because it's a Chinese name, when Chinese stocks are doing well, it's going well, or when Chinese stocks blew up last night, it's doing bad. But that's not the game I'm playing. And I always say to people, just be honest with the game that you're playing, and be true to yourself. And don't get caught up in different types of investment styles. Just try to simplify what your style is. If, for the sake of our discussion, you buy, which is what I offer as my service, let's say 5 stocks on my portfolio, and you weekly weight them, those are my stocks, and you stick with them until I say, trade alert, sell. And it's not more complicated than that. I'm taking ownership. Now, obviously, I don't control the market, and I don't have a future ball that tells me where, GigaCloud or whatever is going to go. But trust my experience, because what's happening is that someone wrote to me, oh, I dumped GigaCloud at like $15. And I'm like, dude, you are buying when it's high and it's hot, and you're selling into the fear, and then you come and blame me. I'm like, dude, that's, it doesn't work like that. It's like me. I always give this example of like if you're a chef and you're trying to make a lasagna, there's a recipe and you follow the recipe, you put it in the oven for 45 minutes, and that's it, right? You put it in the oven and you sit on that for 45 minutes and it comes out. You don't just kind of do everything in your own way and then just hope that it comes out like, restaurant material. You have to give these things time. Okay, I've waffled on a bit about GigaCloud. If anyone wants to ask me any more questions about GigaCloud, this is your time. Otherwise, I'll press on with what I've got prepared for today. Okay. Right. So I've titled today's webinar Should and Shouldn't of Inflection Investing. And I've kind of broken it down into 5 parts. And it sounds big, but it's really short, each part. But it's just to get you thinking. Because I think that, for example, I'm not leaning on Warren Buffett for a crutch, but when Warren puts out a few phrases, it just gets you thinking, and you don't need to elaborate and ponder and whatever. It's just common sense, right? So one thing that I wanted to mention is, think about how long it's taking you in terms of hours to save X amount of money that you're investing. That, it takes a long time, that money. And you have to have respect for the money and respect for yourself. And as a follow-on from that, you got to think about the commitment that you have to whoever's your family or your grandmother or whatever. You've worked hard for money, and you have a responsibility to come and invest that money and not be what I call like the hero investor, the final step before the zero investor. It's not like, take responsibility and think about that, and think about like what you're doing this for. If you want to just buy and sell stocks because you want to activate the dopamine in your brain, go to the casino or whatever, man. But this is serious, and it can change the people's life in your immediate family if you take it seriously. I genuinely know and believe that I will grind and deliver a 15% return per year. And I always say, listen, if you want more than that, I'm not your dude. Just take responsibility and don't gamble away that money. Think about it. Try and, for the most part, it's more important. And I know it's like contradictory, but it's more important to have conviction and stick with the name rather than react out of fear. And this is going to take me to, so whenever I recommend a stock, I'll always tell you, okay, this is working, and this I have my doubts. I said very clearly I have doubts about Ulster, I have doubts about LifeMD. I said it, straight away. I try and be as transparent as possible. And I said to everyone, okay, with MoneyLion, I was buying this stock. I was lucky. Well, I don't know if I was lucky or not. It doesn't matter. We'll see at the end of the story. But I was buying the stock when it was around $18, and it went to 70. And I was buying it at 70 because I believed that what they had was special. From 70, I saw it hit 35. Man, that was killer. That was brutal. That was only a few days ago, and that's like really, really brutal. And I said, okay, what I'm looking now, and I'm always transparent. I said, like, this works, this doesn't, so that you can make, so that you can build trust in what I'm trying to deliver. So with MoneyLion, I said, okay, Q3 results will come out in early November, and the figure that I'm looking for is approximately 15 million of free cash flow. And I feel that if they report 15 million of free cash flow, it can put them on the path to get 60, 17 million of free cash flow in 2025. Okay? So if that happens, share price about 6-7 times free cash flow. I feel that the risk reward is good enough here that I'm ready to. Sorry, let me just. Let me just see this question if you mind. Okay, I'll come to your question, Siri. Sydney. So with MoneyLion, I feel like in Q3, I will get the results and I will say, okay, yes, you can see these things tend to be quite binomial, and it's quite clear to see either it's going to deliver around about 12, 15 million of free cash flow, or it's not. And it's not. I'm not interested. And if it is, I am interested because I say, okay, what they did last quarter was that they said, okay, we are able to grow profitably, and they believed that they had proven to investors that they could grow profitably. So they said, okay, we're going to actually reduce our profitability and increase the amount of investments that we make, so we accelerate our revenue growth rates. And the market hated that. It was like, no, who are you, man? Like, don't change strategy. And when companies tend to do that and change strategy, sometimes next quarter, they come out and say, actually, we've listened to you and we're ready to do what it takes. An example of this will be GitLab. The 2 quarters ago, they said, oh, we're going to change strategy. We're not going to be as profitable. We're going to invest in growth, blah, blah. And then the following quarter, they actually, oh, look how profitable we can be. And the market loved them. And, and so this sometimes the management, because this is small businesses, right? They can be quite nimble and they can do stuff quite quickly to increase the underlying profitability of the business and get investors back on board. So I'm always trying to say to you, don't react to the share price. And sometimes it's brutal. And this goes on to the question that is here on. So I recommended, let's say, MoneyLion at $30. It hit, at $70, it hit $35. And obviously that's brutal. But I'm not trying to guess in a 3-month period where the share price is going to be. I'm trying to think about what the investor next year is going to think about the business. Because guessing where the share price is going to be in 3 months' time is really difficult, if not impossible. So I don't care too much about whether the share price is down or sideways or whatever. I am looking for a specific target. In my case, my North Star is the free cash flow of the business. Can I see visibility to that? So I'm not looking for a percentage that drops and say, oh, it didn't work out or anything like that. And this takes me to the other point that I want to talk in the conversation. I don't like using stop losses, and I'll tell you why I don't use stop losses. I recommend the business, and let's say I recommend, this happens all the time. I'm not going to mention a specific business, and I've changed the narrative here slightly, but this happens all the time, so I'm going to just talk about it. I'll recommend the business at $8, and it goes sideways for like 4 or 5 months. Nothing's happening. All of a sudden, after 5 months or so, it goes to $10 for a few weeks, and people get in and buy it, and then it kind of, the market kind of goes through a bit of a hiccup, and it comes back to 9. So a lot of people buy at 10, they sell at 9, they get flustered, they get frustrated, and then, at a few more weeks later, or even maybe a couple of months later, it's back to 12. So the return has been a 50% return, but too many people kind of bought when it's kind of hot, and then it kind of came down, and it kind of it wasn't meant to be. And I say, don't try to take clues from the market, from the share price. Just try your best to stick with the business. Give the business time. I know that it's really difficult to give a business time. I understand. Sometimes I say, listen, just give me a couple of months. Just stay with it for a couple of months and then make a decision. It's difficult to do, but investing is not supposed to be easy. The other thing that I want to talk about is about a lot of investors really want a smooth performance, and they say, all I want is to buy a few stocks and they go up by 15%, and I don't want all this stress of going through these brutal sell-offs. And it's difficult. It's really difficult because that's not the reality of the world. It's never going to be smooth. And perhaps a smooth return would just be to stay in cash, or perhaps just invest a less amount of money in your portfolio so that you don't have to get all kind of gut-wrenched when things are not working out. And the final thing that I want to talk about is about concentration. And a lot of people say, all I want is to concentrate on a few good ideas. And it's difficult without the benefit of hindsight to figure out what those good ideas are. Because a lot of times things don't work out. You go for a period like I did in July and August, where PDD imploded, Allstate imploded, Moneyline imploded, LifeMD imploded. Like, those periods do happen. They do happen. You have 20 stocks in the portfolio, and 4 or 5 of them are always going to be out of favor at some point or another. So often, not always, but often, the market gets to a point where things are so cheap, people are so worried, but you just see that the share price starts coming back up through what they call like a mountain of worries. They don't like the CEO is on Twitter or something or other. A prime example of this is something like Hims and Hers. Like, people get all kind of confused about what the CEO is doing in their spare time, and they like, if the share price is going up, that's all good, and then people are like, oh yeah, like, go on Twitter. And when the share price is down, people are like, oh my god, the guy's always on Twitter. And it's important to have a few stocks in the portfolio. And if you are a person that is prone to getting overwhelmed, invest less and take this as a journey. And it's gonna be a long journey, but it's a very rewarding journey, because every so often when the whole portfolio kind of moves up by 15-20%, you're like, wow, that's kind of nice. And I see that in myself. I get kind of excited. And when I see that it is moving in the right direction, I'm like, wow, okay, that's going to make a difference. So just to conclude, and this is something that I try to say pretty much on every call. You can see even here today, I'm with my notepad, like write down, have an accountability journal, write down what you're trying to do, because so often the market kind of has this way of confusing us. And in those periods, just go back to your piece of paper and just say, okay, that. Write down 2 or 3 bullet points. And if you, again, what I started the call with, if you think about how many hours you've had to save up that capital to invest, just those 5 minutes that you write that your what I call the accountability journal, it's just a few minutes and it makes a lot of difference. Yeah, that's my call. I'm if anyone wants to ask any questions, please do. This is a good time.
Hey, Michael, this is Haji. I have a question for you.
Thank you so much.
In regards to your today's stock pick, LEU, Centered Energy Corp. I haven't fully digested your article yet. But when I look at the graph of this, and I see that it start getting spike beginning of the September, and so far within a month, the stock made almost like close to 80% increase, which is great. I know you are not sharing your ideas until it's fully baked on your end. I bet you were like this stock was on your radar for a while, and you also was mentioning about the energy, the nuclear energy within the last couple of weeks, the increase. But with this 80% or 79% increase, I know like it get a little bit of correction maybe within the last couple of days. In a long run, yes, there's gonna be like the profit, but I wonder, like what took you? I mean, like can we or was it possible to pick this a little bit too early and then get the benefit? So I don't know, like 10%, 20%, maybe like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. What was your like the critical points? Oh, now it's ready. Now I gotta share it with this team.
Yeah. So 2 things. I get a lot of people writing a lot of things to me, a lot. And people had mentioned this to me, but I was not interested. So the timing sucked on my part, but I also know that when I recommended a different stock, Uploving, it was at a peak that moment in August 2023. It was at a peak there, and it moved sideways for 5 months. And for 5 months, the thesis didn't change. And the company was still doing really, really well, and it took time. Now, a lot of people said to me, on that call, on that day, they said, oh, I'm going to wait for a correction. And the correction did not come, but the share price moved just sideways for a really long time. And people got bored. No one really wanted to buy that stock because it was a dog, right? 5 months ago inside was a dog. And it's really easy after the fact to say, oh, there's a correction. It's really, really easy. And I don't have a good explanation for that. I'm just thinking about relative to, it's difficult to say, yes, there probably will be a correction at some point. But I feel that if I look at the business, the multiples are not that different from where it has been in the past 5 years. They had a massive bump in revenues last quarter, but that's because the business, it's a cyclical business for selling, dispatching enriched uranium. So in a thinner quarter, they have, if in one quarter they have a high shipment of uranium, then they have a high amount of revenue in that quarter. And then they may not have a high amount of revenue in the next quarter, okay? So it's a cyclical business in that sense. And so yes, there was a spike. It's up, as you said, 80%, but the revenues were up, I think, 105%. So yes, there was a spike, but people are not paying a very high multiple for this. And if you look over the past 5 years, the multiple that people have paid for this business is approximately 2.5, 3 times sales. Now, I have followed the uranium space for a long time, and one thing that really bothered me when I recommended in March 2022, which is more than 2 years ago, Uranium Energy Corp, I was way too early. And I promised myself that I would never be early again to recommend something. I would be much more timely. Wait until everyone is aware of the story. Because with the thing with the uranium sector, as there's a lot of political headwinds, and for approximately 12 years, the uranium sector has been in hibernation, and the price of uranium now is kind of starting to move higher, but it's been really, really dead. And what's the trigger here, or the catalyst here, is that there has been, to my knowledge, 3 hyperscalers chasing nuclear energy right now. This is Oracle, this is Amazon, this is Microsoft. There is speculation circling that Google might be next, and I suspect after Google that Meta will be the next player to come here. The problem here is that AI is extremely data intensive. The way to understand this leap in data power is like this. If you think about how much more data, how much more power you need to go from a calculator to a desktop computer, that jump is the same jump is from a desktop computer to a cloud. And that same jump to go from a cloud computing to AI. So every time you need a massive amount of energy. Now, there are going to be efficiencies going through. Already, Jensen from NVIDIA has spoken very much, even I think it was in February or March, there was the investor presentation that they had, that they're already speaking about how they're optimizing for the amount of energy that their new Blackwell GPUs will have. But yes, the amount of energy is coming down to run these. So there's when it comes to these AI data models, there's the training, which is very energy intensive, and then there's the use, the inference of that data model. Now the inference is lower, the amount of data, but you can use it everywhere. So let's take time forward by like 5 years or maybe 10 years, let's take a discussion. In 10 years time, a lot more devices will be running AI technology. This is not me telling you, these are the facts. So you're gonna need a lot more base load energy. And so you're going to need more energy, but at the same time, a lot of countries, particularly in the G7, are trying to move away from carbon sources. For example, I live in the UK. The UK has been the first country in the G7 to cut off their energy from coal. So this is just the first move, but there's going to be more and more countries that are going to say, okay, like, China. China's obviously the pioneer in the terms of growing the bandwidth from nuclear energy. But even Korea, they kind of like, everyone is kind of like domino effect. So there's going to be so much more energy demand. And there's a lag in the system between people wanting to get energy out of nuclear plants. There's a bit of a lag. So you can't just build it overnight. And even with Microsoft's investment in Constellation Energy, and they restarting the 3 Mile Island plant, even with all the money from Microsoft, it's going to take about 3 years more or less. And this is just a plant that is hibernating. This plant is just hibernating, basically just a switch on, and to train people up is going to take 3 years. So, and this is already, it's not the job to build a new plant. Now, I believe that there's going to be a lot of these kind of small modular reactors. Small modular reactors is much smaller. They're like the size like a container ship, but you can have a lot more of them around. So these small modular reactors are going to be one of the ways that a lot of this uranium, enriched uranium, is going to get used. So long story short, I think that we are at the forefront of a movement here that I believed was coming through in 2022. Now, just finally, I've rambled on for a long time. I believe that it's important to have diversification in the portfolio. So I've got 2 uranium stocks, kind of Uranium Energy Corp and the Centrus Energy. So I think that it's important to have diversification. You don't want everything, let's say, in fintech like PayPal or whatever. You don't want everything in in SaaS business models. You need to have some kind of diversification, and I think it's important to think about that. Cool. I think that I've kind of answered that. Any other questions anyone wants to ask? No?
Maybe just clarification for your last article. Shall we treat it as a trade alert because it doesn't have in the title the trade alert?
Yes, definitely. I forgot to put it in. Hey, this is Vasilis, right?
Yeah. Hi.
Vasilis, Vasilis is my go-to person. I'm really grateful for all the help that he's put out. He designed the spreadsheet that everyone sees, and I'm really grateful for it. Thank you so much. Yes, definitely, this is a trade alert. And yeah, I feel, the way that I'm thinking about it is that I just, Q3 earnings season is literally a few weeks away. And I'm kind of hoping that I'll be able to get rid of Meta. I really don't want to take it into the earnings results. I might just in the coming weeks or a couple of days before the earnings results, if it gets too close to $640 a share, it will be very, very close to my target, and I'll just sell that because I honestly believe that there's two names, maybe three names that are really, really interesting, and I'm just want to kind of move the portfolio slightly around, just kind of rejig it a little bit. So I didn't really answer your question now. I'm sorry. Yes, it is a trade alert.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess maybe you have to update the title because people will be expecting it.
Yeah, I will do this later today. Yeah, thank you so much. I will
Great.
definitely.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the suggestion. Thank you.
No problem.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Was that Centrus Energy?
Yeah, LEU is the ticker. LEU.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Michael, I have one last question for you. This is Haji again. One last question. Sorry, guys, excuse me. Since we're heading towards the the holiday season, the retail is gonna, what the graphs show so far is gonna pick up. So is there any any possible stocks like retail for us to get the profit in a small amount of time, like within a couple months? Are you looking at any one of those? Is that on your radar?
I'll answer that two things. Number one, there's no such thing as get rich quick in the market. The market is really, really smart, and there's no kind of way, if I could just buy this and then sell it next month and then I'll become a millionaire. That's not going to happen. Secondly, you always have to look at the comparables relative to a year ago. A year ago, in the same situation, a lot of those graphs are misrepresented because they're like, oh, look how much stronger retail is right now than it was in the last 2 quarters. But that's because Q4 is always very strong, right? So you got to look at the comparable with a year ago. So no, I try and avoid retail because it's really brutal. It's so brutal, man. It's like retail is even worse than with tech stocks, because with tech stocks, you can kind of more or less visualize how it's going to go. With retail, particularly in Q4, it's so brutal because there's so many different data points, and a lot of economists are kind of saying this, that, and the other, and it's really, really difficult. But to answer your question, it's always about the comparable with the prior year, and it also, there's no such thing as a quick trade in the market. I should come up with a more intelligent, more witty quote for that, but yeah, no. Take this seriously, and it's a habit. once you get into the habit of investing and sitting on your hands, and it's a habit, you know, like I've got a couple of seconds, I'll just say it quickly. So, for example, with my daughter, and I said to her, you know, just come home, get doing the homework. I mean, like, just a habit. Once you get into that habit, it doesn't become so difficult, and you get to know yourself, okay? And you get to say, okay, no, this is not my setup, because I have found that when I follow my setup and I'm looking at the forward free cash flows of the business, if I follow my setup, I generally do quite well. What happens is that sometimes I don't follow my setup and then I get killed. And I'm like, oh God, I was so stupid. Why did I do that again? Follow the setup. Get used to mentally investing and sitting on your hands. And yeah, that's what I want to say.
Thank you.
Hi, George. I'll just say hi to you.
Hi, Michael. Hey,
Hi.
is there any update on Peloton? Do you still any news on that? Just be patient, or
Yeah, just be patient. It's really frustrating because unlike some other businesses that I follow closely that had a very strong quarter during the summer, they sold off. Peloton has just gone sideways. So it's not the case that it imploded, it's just been boring, you know? So I didn't want to, but I think I'm going to have to take it through into the earnings. And the thing that I'm going to be looking for in the earnings is whether they show stability in the subscriber number. So if they show that the subscriber number is stable, I'm using as my mental model here Spotify. I know that Spotify's share price can be really up and down, up and down, up and down. I followed it for many years. People are always complaining that it's like really expensive, really overvalued. But as long as the subscriber number is strong, and this can also be taken forward to hims and hers, as long as the subscriber numbers are strong, therefore it will pick up. The share price will pick up, even if it looks boring right now. I know it's painful. Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Michael.
So the person that was managing the spreadsheet is called Basilis. If you, Chris, reach out to me, I will give you the user's name, and maybe you can chat to them afterwards. Cool.
Will do. Thank you, Michael.
Cool. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Really great for you were able to come today, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much, Hal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.